experiencing that even though they were very far away. Jerusalem to Syria was a very far distance. So they delivered their relief check to the church in Jerusalem. And I just want to give you a chronological marker. Last week we talked about Peter's escape and James's beheading. Those events happened about the same time as Paul and Barnabas were making their journey. So this is all happening concurrently as the church is beginning to grow and get its footing. So let's look at how the church is described. It begins off saying that they're prophets and teachers, along with heavy hitters, Saul and Barnabas. Specifically, we meet a man named Simeon of African descent. Perhaps scholars believe he is the one who carried the cross, pulled out of the crowd as Jesus was making his way to Golgotha. His sons, Rufus and Alexander, were counted as part of the Christian community there. And it just reminds me of the godly influence that mothers and fathers both have in the discipleship of their children. A man named Lucius of Cyrene, he was also from northern Africa. And then a guy named Manaen. Now, Manaen was a foster brother and an intimate friend of Herod the Tetrarch, also known as Herod Antipas. I know there's lots of Herods, and we've talked about him a little bit. Often the royal family would include in its circle the children of slaves who were of the same age and would become playmates. It's very likely that Herod shared the same wet nurse as Manaen, and they grew up as brothers in the household as they were children. Herod fell in disfavor, and we'll talk about that in a minute, went a different way. Manaen followed Jesus, and Herod followed the world of power. But that connection, that link to prominence was important, and it just so shows you again how diverse the church was. This is a guy who was politically connected, even though it was a ruthless secular government. He had a personal relationship with this guy. That was how things got done in the first century. It wasn't, you weren't loyal to the guy you went to school with. There was a family connection. There was a who you knew. There were who your father knew. And you were loyal to those connections even if they were slave and free. It was a much different system than we had in our country. And just one more word about this Herod Antipas. He is the son of Herod the Great, and this is Herod Antipas. He was involved in the trials of Jesus. So again, just think of this godly man who was part of the Antiochian church, but he was also connected, and I'm no doubt praying for Herod as Jesus was on trial. And this Herod was also active in the beheading of John the Baptist. So just all that convoluted relationship, just like our world, right? Convoluted relationship. What I want you to see, even if we're making conjecture at timing and relationship, this is a cross-section of a diverse church, representatives from all walks of life, but representing a thriving city that also empowered a thriving church. We need to look beyond the walls of our church and invite everyone in. And that's the message from here. Because what could have been a hodgepodge of people turned into a central force for the gospel's advance. And let's look how they did it. They moved forward, point number one, because the church was guided by the Holy Spirit. Acts 1:8, this promise, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea, in Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And the vehicle to do that isn't a loudspeaker, isn't a publishing campaign, isn't excellent social media marketing. It's the spiritual gifts given to each one so that we may be empowered to do his work. 1 Corinthians 12:7, a spiritual gift is given to each of us so we can help each other. So we can help each other, so we can further the gospel cause, so we can build the church brick by brick. And that's what bound them together, the unifying Holy Spirit. Not a mystical force, but a person. And the person who resides in our hearts quickens our spirit and parallels the thoughts and mind of Christ as he moves us forward for his glory. That unifying force, though, that binding up together didn't just happen by chance. They invited it in. They engaged in activities that showed their priorities. And let's look at what they were. Let's look at verses 2 and 3 there in Acts. While they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, "Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them." So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off. Notice they were worshiping. Notice that Antioch was a spiritually